Crypto has always moved in various cycles, and different types of tokens have gotten focus at different times. Surprisingly, because of regulation, meme coins have had free reign over the past couple years, and tokens that actually have use have been pretty hampered. Now that's starting to shift. Utility tokens are starting to gain some traction because of some shifts we've seen in the regulatory environment, and HBAR is the king of utility. This week we're going to go through some of the most impressive utility we have on the network, including decentralized physical infrastructure and real-world asset tokenization. And if you can get to the end of this video and aren't impressed, you don't have to come back to this channel. But if you are, we cover dozens of different things that are being built on Hedera week in and week out. Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, here every week to bring you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So to kind of frame how things are looking in the crypto landscape, we're going to go to one of the most powerful people in the crypto space, CZ. He is the founder of Binance, the largest exchange currently in the world. He says, I'm not against meme coins, but meme coins are getting a little weird now. Let's build real applications using blockchain. Now, I'd say decentralized physical infrastructure is some of the most impressive utility we're seeing coming out of the crypto space, and we have some really good updates coming a little bit later on. One of them is from Wisesat, who already has 17 satellites in orbit specifically designed for transactional Internet of Things. They have more going up next month, and they have some other really exciting things to talk about as well. But first, I want to welcome back Zepsy. He used to co-host this show with me before I left the HBAR Foundation, and he frames all this really well, so let's check it out. Zep, welcome back. I missed you, buddy.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going really good. Now, there's been some changes that I've noticed on the HBAR Foundation X account. Can you tell us about the new strategy from the intern at the HBAR Foundation and what you're doing with it?
Yeah, so I mean the point of an intern strategy, like we've seen it with other chains, we've seen it with Near, we've seen it with Monad very well. It's basically a way, I think, of having a sort of ground up approach to community marketing, in a way that sort of humanizes the brand. And so when you look at a company like Hedera, an organization like Hedera, it has always been very sort of severe, like very professional, but quite cold, business first. There's not really that entertainment factor. And so I think when the foundation itself was launched, there was a large expectation that, the foundation would fill that void, make the ecosystem more entertaining, make the branding more fun, pull in the degens, pull in the, just the people that are looking to be on chain, really, the ones in the DeFi economies, the ones in the NFT economies, this kind of thing. And so that was the thought, I think, early on, and it kind of got a bit convoluted. That was the community expectation. And as the years have gone by, we've been in that bull market, and I just don't, sorry, in that bear market rather, and I just don't think it was the right time during that period for this kind of intern strategy to really come to fruition. I think if I'd started doing the sort of shit posting and the memes, etc., during a real financial depression for the HBAR variants, I think it would have been taken, pretty badly actually. And so I think it's the perfect time to sort of pull it out. I think the benefits that it brings to the ecosystem is that humanization of the brand, but also things like, maximizing the amount of attention the Hedera network can get outside of these large announcements, right? So we had that RCAX announcement last week with, the announcement that they tokenized some of Fidelity, some of State Street, and another LMIG, I believe it was, on the Hedera network, massive announcements. And regardless of that, that announcement only got, I think it was like 731 likes. That is partially because, Cointelegraph broke that news, CoinDesk covered it. So we didn't break it. So we didn't have that immediate sort of attention, pulling in of that attention. But even so, the posts that I've put out on the foundation recently of, the meme, it was Pepe in a train or something. I got like 1.6k likes, I think. It's like more than double the RCAX announcement. The Hedera is a dinosaur one, which outperformed it. You had the GM one that outperformed it. And so all of this, I think, is to show that we can be bringing this attention sort of continuously without those large announcements having to be there all the time. But it gives us that ability to shine light on those announcements via something a bit more entertaining. So that's the way I'm looking at it, really, is to make it the profile more relatable, more unusual in sort of maximizing that attention, and more entertaining. And I think if we can continue to keep up the momentum that it currently has, the amazing feedback we've been having from the community, this whole Dino Coin narrative, I think if we can keep up that momentum, then it's going to be really, really positive, at least for the socials account on the foundation.
Well, Zep, I know that you've been pushing for this for a really long time, these kind of shifts. I think that you're right. It needed this kind of beginning of a bull run fervor to really work to its full potential. So even though they've kept you on a short leash to this point, I think right now is a perfect time to loosen those reins up and let you run a little bit. You mentioned the Dino Coin thing, and I want to touch on that a little bit more. What is the Dino Coin theme, and why have you embraced it so much?
Yeah, I mean, originally well, still is in many ways. Being called a dino coin is somewhat of an insult, right? Like the Rand Neunas of the world, that sort of cabal of influencers, they use this term quite repetitively to describe the coins that have been around building for longer than the shiniest ones, right? So as these influencers get paid by the likes of Sui and Aptos and Ton and whoever else to cover their content, they become the shiny coins of the cycle. These are the ones those influencers latch onto because they have vested interest, right? And so when other coins start running, like Rand Nuna put out a post being like, I was horrified to see these, Dino coins running. All he's saying is that he's horrified to see his bags not pumping. And by calling them Dino coins, yes, it's an insult. But I think by, flipping that on its head and saying, the Dino coins are the ones that have survived these bear markets, that have continued to innovate despite funding going towards these shiny new coins, the ones that have government interests, working with the United States in many cases. Hedera, for instance, is the only layer one in the United States Democracy Roundtable, I believe it was called, when they put out that kind of call for tech companies to help shape the future of the states. The only layer one there was Hedera, right? And if that means we're a dinocoin, I'll accept that any day of the week. Alongside these government interests, it means they're working with the institutions, with the enterprises, because they have that sort of, grade, that heritage behind them, where they haven't just done one boom and bust. They've proved that they can continue to innovate, prove that they continue to grow, and prove that they're going to be around for a long time. So in a very convoluted way, I think embracing the Dinocoin narrative is positive. Turning into a meme is, the most positive thing that we can get from that. And even through that, we're seeing, these coins emerging, which I think is quite exciting as well. I'm not a part of these meme coin teams, but I know that there is a trusted one being built, which I'm quite excited about.
I absolutely loved that post that Rand put out listing all the Dino coins and saying, I don't know anybody who's building on these things. And then, of course, you reply with a picture of him at Karate Combat with this huge built on Hedera right in the center of the pit. It works perfectly because there are so many things that Hedera is building. And just like we kind of wanted, it's in the background a lot of times, not with Karate Combat, obviously, with that huge logo in the center of the pit. But we want people to be using Hedera and not even know it in a lot of instances. And then in other instances, we want them to be fully aware of exactly what they're building. And that highlighted that perfectly.
Yeah, that was, I was glad I was allowed to let that one rip, because it was it was playful to some extent, but it was also like, come on, man, like you're engagement farming, so let me do it back,
No, it worked out perfectly. So you mentioned Dino Coin. Of course, we're talking about Hedera and Algorand and XRP and all of these other tokens that have continued to build. But there's also the potential for a meme coin here, I think, within the Hedera ecosystem. There's been a couple that popped up already, but I think there's so much potential in just embracing this narrative as a whole.
Definitely. As with anything, it's just all about attention, right? We've seen with memes that memes are the most effective means of communication in an era of the internet, and it's the most effective way of communicating something at the speed of the internet. And so memes have always been that way of, it's like a digital currency, right? And then when meme coins came out, they actually did become sort of digital currencies. And so I think the extension of, this intern strategy, being more playful, has given hopefully a fertile ground for these exciting little meme coin projects and whatever, or NFTs or whatever it might be, retail basically, to roll with that and grow with that and hopefully help boost the retail ecosystem on Hedera.
Completely agreed. So, Zep, as we close this out, I'm just curious, as we're entering what looks like it could be a pretty impressive bull market, what are your thoughts on Hedera and the ecosystem in general?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I'm really excited about is the changing regulatory landscape in the US. I think one of the things that has always held us back is having been so pro US or US centric as a company, born and raised in Texas, etc., when the country itself wasn't helping us innovate. They're paying the taxes, working within very gray legal boundaries that didn't really exist and playing everything so cautiously. And now that seems to have flipped, and you've got this sort of US coin narrative that's emerged, of some rumors, but also it gives that kind of green flag, I think, for more traditional investors or boomer capital that I was mentioning the other day, and Gen X capital to come in and go, what, I've heard about Bitcoin, but there's if this thing's called Web3, then obviously there's something to do with the next generation of the internet there. I don't want to miss investing in Microsoft or Google or IBM or Apple again. So I'm going to take a punt on this next version of the internet. And oh my God, look at Hedera. You've got this amazing council. Look at Stellar, who's got their own sort of financial way of looking at things. And I think they'll be attracted to these networks that show that professionalism, right? Show that degree of forward thinking, of just they can look at it and see similarities between that and what they'd look at the traditional stock market, right? And I think the performance of these utility coins, these Dino coins, has been a very exciting first indicator of what might come in the future. So exciting times for the Dino coins and the utility coins, and yeah, very excited for what this bull run is going to be for us.
Yeah, you've made that point a couple times. I've talked about it a lot in the past that during these bull runs, we get all kinds of new people, and that is going to include Zennials like me and Generation X boomers. And I think that the narrative that Hedera has, and when they see the council, it really resonates with those people. And those are some of the people that have some of the most capital, as you highlighted as well. So I think we're in a pretty good shape going into the next few months and the year to come. All right, Zep. Well, thanks for hopping on here today. I really appreciate all your efforts, and don't be a stranger.
Of course. Catch you in a bit, Brandon.
So I hope we can get Zep back more often. I really do miss his insights. And as we mentioned there, he's been doing a really impressive job on the social media accounts for the HBAR Foundation. So now let's move over to that decentralized physical infrastructure. We're going to go to Carlos. He is the CEO and founder of CLSQ, and Wisesat, who's doing some absolutely amazing things. Some of the audio was a little bit off. You let me know if it's too annoying. We're still trying to get it a little bit better, but I think it's clear enough, certainly, to pass on some of the impressive stuff they have going on over there. Carlos, welcome back. It seems like you've been pretty busy lately.
Yeah, Brandon, nice to be with you again in your channel. Yeah, a lot of activity going on everywhere.
Well, we're going to have to dig into it. First, Carlos, just to kick this off, can you give us a refresher on Wisesat, CLSQ, and your goals in general?
So as you remember on the first interview, we are trying to solve a major problem, which is machine-to-machine interactions, right? Machines are non-secure. They cannot send data between themselves if they are not secure. They cannot make payments between themselves if they are not secure. So first, we solve with the cybersecurity layer and putting a strong authentication into the device itself through our microchip. CLSQ manufactures and designs secure microchips that you put inside the object. So that was solved, and we did an amazing deployment of that technology. Big brands are using this technology already. Now, the second one, we say, okay, now the machines are secure. Can they start to pay each other? Imagine a drone paying a satellite for data they collect from the satellite, or a connected car paying into the parking meter because you have to use that facility. So that machine-to-machine payment does not exist, right? The world doesn't allow yet machines to pay. And this is a huge opportunity for Hedera and companies like us because you have to validate every transaction. And we are talking here about trillions of transactions. And one of the reasons we use Hedera is because this is the only one that can handle trillions of transactions. If you do that in Ethereum and on others, you cannot scale up to 1 trillion transactions. So the verification of the identity of the object is key before you let the object to pay, right? It's like you will do with your credit card. When you swap the card, you have to wait a few seconds until you have credit, and then you make a transaction. So we regenerate the same payment infrastructure between the satellite with the digital identities and the Hedera backend. Yeah. So it's a very, very powerful model. Now we are in the proof of concept process, so we are working with the companies and they need this technology in real time. And in June in Davos, we should be able to announce very big projects.
All right. Well, that's what we want to hear. One of the quotes, and I have to confess that I've used it over and over again, is your quote saying that, of course, we want to onboard the next billion users, but we also want to onboard the next trillion objects. And that's really impactful to me because there's already trillions of objects out there, and so many of them could use the ability to have that value transfer mechanism in between them.
Absolutely. And this will disrupt the financial services, because now you have very big banks like JP Morgan using blockchain to do financial settlements. But for a moment, they only do on people. There is a limit of people you can do financial settlements. Imagine them being able to do financial settlements on objects. So every object has a bank account. That object sends tokens to another object, and a big financial institution, whether JP Morgan, UBS, whoever, will be a financial clearinghouse, getting a transaction fee for that clearing process. So this is merging now the industrial world with the financial world, because this is a concrete way to onboard them into the crypto world. For the moment, we're looking for use cases, but they don't have many. And now, yes, when you start to solve industrial problems like electricity transfer between tokens or like security update between objects using token, then obviously they get them on board, and this is exactly what is happening now.
Well, I know the DPIN is becoming a thing across the entire Web3 space. We have another really big DPIN project in our space in Neuron. How do you think things are developing in the Web3 enabled Internet of Things industry as a whole?
So I guess we had actually a discussion with Nora and the founder on cooperating between ourselves. I think what we have that is very unique is that we are able to put an identity at the object level. And this is not only a backend system, right, where you just process without knowing what the object is. So we basically, in the financial world, you have what you call know your customer, KYC. Here is know your object, right? Is KYO. And DYO is what we are providing because every object has a chip, every object has a certificate. A certificate is compliance with the new regulatory movements like the cyber trust mark in the United States, which says every object needs to be marked as a trusted object. And for that, you need a macro secure chip embedded, or the matcher certification with the home devices, like your cameras at home, your smoke detectors. All that needs to be authenticated because if an intruder object gets into your secure backend, it compromises the total security of your house, right? So because we are at the object level, and actually not only we are at the object level, but we are actually on a post-quantum roadmap at the object level, and this is the uniqueness of CLSQ. We are developing TPM technology based on RISC-V. This is a very powerful decentralized model. So this goes in competition with the NVIDIAs of the world in the future because NVIDIA is a centralized system with a $35,000 very expensive chip where you can generate the same computing power by having thousands of CLSQ chips decentralized, working as a mesh and exchanging the power between themselves. So we are moving from a centralized infrastructure towards a decentralized infrastructure. And this is where I think it's a win-win, because we win as an industrial deployer. Hedera wins because you get billions, trillions of transactions generated in your system, and then the industry will develop services on the top of that. And this is going to be what you call the Web 3.0, industrial Web 4.0, which is an intersection between Web 3.0 and Industry 4.0, right? Which is the German, France, all these industrial countries in South Korea. They are now saying, okay, we want to interconnect all our objects, all our manufacturing capability into the Web 3.0 through an identity, through a certification process.
So now you've mentioned Hedera a couple times. I'm sure now you've had some more exposure to the network. How's it been working out for you?
So Hedera is a very close partner. As you remember, they invested on CL Coins. So Hedera is a shareholder of CL Coin through the Hashgraph Association. And we are together, developing new technology where this blend between industrial cybersecurity IoT is matching with a Hedera system to create what we call TIoT, right? Which is the big thing, transactional IoT. And transactional IoT is something that CL Coin is trying to solve. The good news, we got a non-action letter on FINMA. FINMA is the Swiss regulatory, it's like the SEC in the United States. That was announced only last week. So FINMA recognized the CL Coin as a utility hybrid token, which is great because that is exactly what it is. It was very difficult with the previous SEC to discuss utility. You know how complex that was. So now we have a clarification. Hopefully, we will have also an SEC clarification in the future. That will be a huge market, because nobody's there. I mean, others will try to be there, but I think, as I mentioned before, the fact that Hedera can handle trillions of transactions and the fact that they are so low cost per transaction make this possible. You will not be able to charge $1 per verification. Obviously, the object will become too expensive, but you can charge 0.001 cent, or you can charge HBAR per one transaction. I mean, you can mix these kind of things together.
Sure, absolutely. I think that's going to be what the theme is over the next few years, is this regulatory clarity is going to allow the innovation just to completely explode. Now I want to get to your upcoming launch with SpaceX. You're going to be launching some additional satellites into your constellation. How is that going to affect the capabilities of your network?
You remember we have 17 Pico satellites being launched with the SpaceX in the last 2.5 years. Now we have designed a new satellite, which is much bigger, more powerful than the previous one. It has camera capability, so you can capture pictures on it. We have embedded also the next generation chips, so it has a post-quantum chip capability, so you can encrypt communication between the satellite and an Earth station. We actually put one Earth station already in southern part of Spain, and another one in Switzerland. And we got approached by the Swiss Army because obviously Switzerland, it's a neutral country. We have our own ways of doing neutrality, and the Swiss military was very interested to see whether they could use that constellation of satellites than we have and develop new ones more designed to their specifications, which is what we did, right? Now we are launching one, which is a test case for this new cooperation with the Swiss Army. So the Swiss Army will use the satellite, we test the satellite, and then obviously the objective is to move to a full constellation with 100 satellites. So 100 satellites or satellites cost, including the launch, is around $300,000 per one satellite. Because it's getting lower, I think we're going to manage in the years to come to launch a satellite for $50,000, right? It will be cheaper buying satellite than buy a car, right? That's the business model type of that we have. So we can popularize the use of the space, because in the future you will do not only connectivity and IoT exchanges, but you could imagine also put nodes in the space. We discussed that in the previous discussion, right? Imagine the possibility of having few Hedera nodes in the space. That will be the cheapest way and the safest way to operate nodes. And you don't have electricity issues because you have solar power. You don't have heat issues because it's so cold in the space. So that will be huge advantages to operate those things. And and that's part of the expansion, right? This connection between the space with objects on Earth as a way to track and trace in an optimal way.
Carlos, you mentioned one of your potential customers there with the Swiss Army. How are things just in general looking on your customer front? Do you have a fair amount of interest?
Yeah, the model we are doing now, and actually everybody's invited, is to do proof of concepts, because this is a very new thing. And some industrial players, if you go talk to BMW or you're going to talk to Mercedes and companies that we have been working in the past on the cybersecurity, some of them they say, wow, this is great, but how I start, right? So what we are doing is proof of concept, which is select a group of their objects, a machine or IoT devices, secure them, put them to talk to each other, exchanging tokens. And when they see that working, they take the further decision to expand the entire production system. Right? So it's going to be, as happened in this type of industry, it goes slow at the beginning and then goes exponential, right? I think the exponentiality also starts next year because obviously the crypto climate is much better. You have now Trump, and all that is going to boost cryptos, but at the same time, it's going to force crypto to identify serious projects on crypto, right? Which not all of them they are serious, as you know. So industrial projects are very serious because it's tangible. You can see it, you can test it, you can operate, you can make money out of it. So tangible projects are going to take the lead, and I think it's going to be an exciting year for us, 2025.
I'd say that you're pretty much the most serious project that I've seen on crypto in general. But the next thing I want to touch on is something that I saw, like you didn't have enough going on already. You're planning on launching a phone. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's part of the extension. I mean, for us, fun is an object, right? It is a smart object, and funds has the capability to verification. I mean, you imagine a situation where you will verify with a camera phone, you will verify a certificate that is embedded into the object using near field communication combined with camera, and that information will be transferred to the satellite. The satellite transfers that communication to whatever certification center. Imagine you are a luxury company like LVMH, or you are a production of a luxury product company or industrial pharmaceutical company where 50% of their pharma is counterfeiting. So that will be a very easy way with that secure phone to extract the identity out of the object, validate through the satellite, and get out, yes, this object is a genuine object. You can trust the object. That could be anything. You can go in your camera in your house and just check your smoke detector, whether it is protected or not, it is trusted or not. So that's the first element. The second element, and we are working with Hedera on that, we want to put a crypto wallet, because the phone, we have cleaned the phone. I mean, it's a phone that uses Android, obviously, as an operating system, but totally customized for our needs. So we have clean Android of any potential backdoors or extraction processes, and we have kept the essential on it. And we have added our PKI, public infrastructure capabilities. So you have a cryptographic root key signing inside the phone every communication the phone does. It has encryption capabilities. So the phone can also be used as a secure phone for military use. Imagine soldiers running their phone connected to satellites, whether they are in the battlefield, or police, or fire people. I mean, anyone that has a requirement to be in a trusted area with a trusted phone will have an option with that fund, and it's going to be the fund is already there. I mean, we are testing now, and will be disclosed and shown to the world at the World Economic Forum in Davos during our event, the Davos WiseKey event that we organize every year in the last 20 years. So we will be showing the fund capability there.
Very exciting. Now, maybe not for the military version, but for the retail version, what I think would be really cool is, how a lot of the phones come with a bunch of applications already loaded. It would be cool to have a bunch of Hedera applications already loaded, like games like Steam Runner or Karate Combat. We have Hashpack, things like that. I think that would be really exciting to have a lineup of Hedera applications.
Exactly. We're actually working with Hedera on putting some of those apps into the fund. Once you solve the security issue and the identity issue on the phone, means nobody can steal your identity, nobody can compromise your phone. Obviously, the level of security is much higher. Than whatever you put on the top of that level of security benefit as well, because many of the apps are not secure apps, and you can get hack an app, right? So that will create a layer of confidence that whatever you put on the top of that layer will have higher security and higher ownership as well, because ownership is very important than if you are using an iPhone or whatever, right? That's the objective. Obviously, we don't want to compete against the iPhones of the world, right? We are a niche player. We just want to solve one problem that those phones don't solve currently.
Very exciting. And I was remiss. Of course, I have to name my own app, Twidgedal, as well. But yes. Before we let you go, Carlos, is there anything else you'd like to cover around your token, or anything else you're working on?
No, just that, as I mentioned, next year is going to be a year where we will be making the token available to the investment community. It is an endeavor, as I mentioned before. Hedera is a shareholder of CL Coin. .ai, which is the website. We obviously going to be very open to any type of cooperation. The idea here is to really create a Web 3.0 ecosystem of transactional product. So anyone that has developed anything that will be of the benefit of that vision to connect trillions of objects and let them to be secure and transactional can work with us. We are very open to work with anyone. And what we really want is to move the Web 3.0 agenda. And I think next year is the beginning, and it's going to last at least during the next 5 years. So let's use that opportunity.
Fantastic. Well, good luck on your launch in January. Of course, that is going to be with SpaceX. Thanks for coming on today and talking to us.
Thank you very much for your time and your interviews. They are great. Thank you very much. Look forward.
One of the things that's crazy to me is I am so impressed with everything Wisesat and CLSQ are doing, but I'm not sure which DPIN project in the Hedera space I'm more impressed by, because we also have Neuron out there who's working with the likes of Amazon and Google Wing to revolutionize drone delivery, but that's just where it's going to start. Once they have the infrastructure out, they're going to be able to do so many more things with it, from smart cities to autonomous vehicles and so forth. And apparently it impressed the Hedera Governing Council member from BitGo, and we have another clip from that this week.
I want to give it an example of scalability that is being powered by like a high throughput blockchain like Hedera. This is not something we're involved in at BitGo, but we recently spoke to a company by way of Hedera, actually, called Neuron. Neuron is in the DeepIn space, or otherwise the decentralized physical infrastructure, right? It's this up and coming sort of segment of the blockchain. And at the heart, they're an infrastructure company that provides more efficient communication between edge computing devices using blockchain. They've built an SDK that allows the edge devices to communicate with each other and also facilitate transfers of value and storage of data on using blockchain. Their first big application of this was actually for flight and drone tracking. And it's this kind of weird, esoteric part of the industry that most of us don't think about. You have this explosion of drone activity, low level, low altitude flying objects that are in many cases harder to track. And you need a network, a large network of sensors that are constantly live, constantly online, and reading data and passing that data on to, in many cases, a centralized server. And that increases bandwidth requirements and actually makes it really expensive to run some of these flight tracking or drone tracking applications. So their first use case was actually to decentralize the communication between the edge devices and the central server and allow those edge devices to communicate more easily with each other. It's not completely on the edge, but there's far less centralization of their infrastructure. That's actually enabled a really fast, low latency, high throughput application to track drones. And they've got a proof of concept mostly in Europe right now. But as you see drone traffic kind of explode, the need for something like this is made apparent, and it's not something that was easily solved by existing Web 2 technologies. There may be solutions, but they found an elegant solution using creative use of edge computing, decentralized physical infrastructure, and on a blockchain like Hedera.
So it is pretty hard to argue that decentralized physical infrastructure utility vertical is going to have the biggest impact on the crypto space. But there's a lot of other verticals as well. So which one of the utility verticals do you think is going to have the biggest impact on the Hedera network? Let me know down in the comments. So the next thing we're going to get into is shark bites. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to fit that in this week, considering we had the holiday week. But luckily, Rob and I were able to figure it out. So let's take a look. Rob, welcome back. I'm liking the shirt. It's going with the theme.
It is. There's a dino super cycle just heading off. So I thought I'd get with the theme and get some support in, being one of those dinosaurs.
One of my favorite movies and one of my favorite novels.
Jurassic Park, absolutely.
Yeah.
And sharks, of course, are older than the dinosaurs. Sharks have been around for 450 million years.
Older than trees.
Well, it's crazy to think about it, isn't
Yeah.
it? But they've been evolving for way beyond the Jurassic era, and unfortunately, we brought them to the brink of extinction within one lifetime, one generation. But we're working on that too. So yes, we're very pumped about the Dino super cycle. It's our time.
It is. I think it is. So, Rob, we do have a little bit of a truncated timetable here today, so we're going to try to do a little bit rapid fire. So I'm going to jump right into the questions here. Valder asked, since the TPS drop and corresponding revenue drop, how big of a topic is revenue and becoming net positive on the agenda for Hedera and the Governing Council?
Massive. It's kind of what we have to focus on. It's all about revenue. So getting the right balance of transaction fees and pricing and volume driven by use cases. It's all about revenue. It's all about getting to the point where the network can grow and grow organically. So simple answer, it's all about revenue.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. And we're going to get to some more questions around TPS, but we're going to jump into the next one. So Turtle4668 asks, would Brian Brooks need to step down from Hedera if he gets the job due to conflict of interest? Now, what we're talking about here is Brian Brooks. He is one of the board members of the HBAR Foundation, not Hedera, but he's on the short list of candidates for the Security and Exchange Commission chairmanship. So that's, of course, a huge position as far as regulators here in the United States. I think the answer is pretty clear here, right, Rob?
It would have to be yes. In any kind of director role with fiduciary responsibilities, which I'm sure the chair of the SEC has, it needs to be deconflicted. It needs to remove any even sniff of being conflicted in any way, and not following one's fiduciary duties of loyalty and care to one's organization and to the role and the job. So yes, I think it would be, if he was selected as the chair of the SEC, it would be absolutely the right thing to do, to step down from his directorship of the HBAR Foundation to assume his new role. I would imagine that it would be a requirement, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious to me that would be the case. But the point is, of course, Brian is a friend to the crypto industry. He obviously believes in the potential of the industry, but regardless if it's him or one of the other people on this short list, we're going to have somebody who is much more open-minded towards the crypto industry.
Absolutely, and he's done a good job, I think, in his directorship of the foundation. He's certainly exposed to the Hedera ecosystem, so it would be an amazing appointment from our perspective and from the wider Web3 space. Absolutely.
So we have one from Boomer here. I probably should have put the two around TPS together, but either way, Boomer says, with the number of projects created on Hedera, how is it possible that TPS is so low?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. What we do say quite often is that many of the use cases are not high volume use cases. So we have many projects, but they're just starting, or they're just maybe doing 1 or 2 TPS an hour or a day. It doesn't actually reflect in that particular metric. Now, there are lots of other metrics which they would be reflected in. It's the danger, I guess, of gravitating towards one single metric such as TPS. And we've had the luxury in the last year or so of having an extremely high TPS for one use case. Now, there will be, as this technology is adopted and some of the bigger high throughput use cases come along, we'll absolutely get back up there. But even 3 or 4 real world TPS, we look at other networks, but there's a lot of artificial TPS kind of management and wash trading and whatever else is driving those numbers. We can be assured that that's not happening on Hedera. And so even 3 or 10 or 20 TPS is actually, that's transactions per second. Multiply that out by 24 hours and 365 days. It's still a lot of usage for the use cases that we're working with. I mean, if you think about the kinds of interactions that you have with the Hedera network, we're not on it. Well, we're not all of us on it all of the time. If even in TradFi, if I'm making payments, I'm only tapping and paying 3-4 times a day, maybe not even that. And then you multiply that by a whole nation, you're still only getting to millions of transactions a day or hundreds of transactions a second. So you need quite a lot of big, high volume use cases to even touch that number. But those are coming. I have total confidence those are coming.
Well, one of the other things is, we're always waiting for that next use case, but all of these use cases that are active on Hedera, even the ones that are going to be very high volume, they have to ramp up, right? Whether it's Karate Combat or SKUX or whatever it is, you look at the individual users of Karate Combat, and it's gone from 1,500 to over 100,000 in less than a year. But the trajectory is just going straight up. I mean, you have to consider that as well. Like, all of these businesses have to not only get this thing launched, but then they have to scale as well.
But even Karate Combat with, say 1 million users would have peaks and troughs. There'd be, like 3-4 week periods where you wouldn't maybe touch Karate Combat or do much with the Hedera network underneath it. And yet you've got an event and it will peak. And so, there are lots of factors at play here. You've got the projects who are seeking to find product market fit in a world where Web3 is still new in terms of real world utilization. Once you've got product market fit, you're trying to get user adoption. And so that growth curve is, takes a year. I mean, it could take longer. But we've got all of these projects, as the questioner says, and they're all on a similar trajectory because they've started at a similar time. So one can imagine that in aggregate, this is why it's quite useful not to have the single use case of Atma. So in aggregate, we'll be able to see all of these things coming together, and then they'll start achieving network effect, which will give us kind of supplementary TPS on top of that and lock in. So it then organically grows. And I think we're pretty close to that.
Yeah, and wherever we see success, we're going to see copycats jump on. And then, of course, like with Karate Combat, you have teams that they're going to try to get more copycats on board because they don't want to be on an island doing this all by themselves as far as this up-only gaming concept. And there's going to be a lot of that going on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's all open source now. So, it makes things a lot easier, not just the core network stack, but a lot of the projects that are building will be contributing code into the higher project, and then that makes things, it lowers the bar to building as well.
Yeah, well covered. All right, so H Barbarian has a couple. He says, first, Rob, in your humble opinion, do you think X Payments will leverage Hedera? The second is, do you think Hedera LLC could purchase the Google browser Chrome? Now, Rob, I think this is a great opportunity. These are the kind of rumors that pop up once we start to see a bull market. I haven't seen this kind of stuff substantiated anywhere, but I figured it was a good opportunity to touch on them.
Yeah, I mean, X Payments couldn't do better than coming to Hedera. I mean, to be honest, it does everything that a high volume payments solution would be required within a social media platform such as X. So yes, absolutely. I think my comms are always open for Elon to come and ask how that might be done. If he doesn't, then we can go and do it anyway. Google Chrome, I think that's just some kind of fever dream by an ex community member. I wouldn't imagine, just because we have a Google connection and Google on the governing council, I cannot imagine any scenario where it would be a good use of funds to of the HBAR treasury, which is effectively what's being said here, to go and acquire a Google Chrome at all. So I think that's one of those. Like you say, as things start heating up into the bull market, there will be lots and lots of these crazy ideas, and 99% of them will be wrong. But it's fun.
There's little grains in there, right? Yeah. So, of course, Elon tweeted the HBAR symbol. I do think he knew full well that he was either messing with us or there might have been some substance there. And then, as you mentioned, Google is on the Hedera governing council. So people grab a hold of that stuff and just start to talk and think through that. And then it gets into social media and goes like wildfire, right?
It does. And it is fun to see if you can join the dots, but, come to the wrong conclusion.
Sure.
Those combinations, but that's where innovation happens. People have to think outside the box. People have to think about the impossible in order to make it possible first. So the whole concepts around science fiction are about doing that. And how many things are we now seeing coming to into fruition that were first dreamed up by science fiction writers? So I wouldn't rule it out, but I think it's highly, highly improbable in 99% of these fever dreams.
Yeah, there you go. And I think the X Payments makes perfect sense. And we should try to push forward as hard as we can by getting that out there on X. You know that Elon is on there on a fairly regular basis. So, get his attention. All right, so the next one we have is HBAR Maxi. He says, will special purpose networks, even if private, still pay Hedera and run transactions on mainnet? Now, this is an interesting thing because I also had the conversations again around the Karate Combat team because they're going to have that layer 2 on top of Hedera. And of course, they're tying it in with smart contracts. Now, it's a really innovative thing. It's interesting how they're going to be tying back to the mainnet. But most of these special purpose networks, they have the potential to tie into Hedera as well, right?
Yeah, and they will. I mean, it's exactly the same stack. The productization by Hashgraph of the Hedera stack in a way that can be implemented in a private network for use cases that require that the privacy and confidentiality and all of those things, isn't detached completely from the mainnet. There are many ways that you're going to have to anchor security into the mainnet. There may be some interoperability. I mean, when I was in Miami, I had dinner with the Hashgraph team, and I was sat next to Lehman, and we spent the whole meal talking about the roadmap, the block streaming into block nodes, community nodes, sharding, state proofs. All of these things are being developed with the same kind of outcome in mind, which is we've got the potential now to attract enterprise using private networks and confidential and privacy-based use cases. We've got a public ledger mainnet, which has the security, has the ability to have true value on it. You can't have true value on a private network. You can address lots of use cases, but not the things like that hold true kind of stable coins and other forms of value. But you can also hybridize those models. So the interesting things from my perspective is if we have kind of payment systems that are on public ledgers and we have use cases that require some kind of private network, how do you interoperate? How do you flow value from the public networks into a private instance and then out again? What does that look like? And Lehman was explaining to me his thoughts on all of that as well. So absolutely, we've got we've got the original concept of shared worlds, which is where Lehman and Mance started this journey. Now kind of being created, these special purpose bubbles, but with bridges, not with a small b, rather than what we believe to be kind of bridge architecture these days, but other ways of bridging between the mainnet and the private networks, and also anchoring in the mainnet as a kind of a base layer, if you like. And then, of course, like up-only gaming, layer twos now. So special networks, special public networks that are anchored into the mainnet. And all of this, because all of this is the Hashgraph consensus mechanism based, you inherit all of these amazing super speed, super low cost, super sustainable benefits and properties of the networks, but now in any kind of architectural model that you want to apply. It's a very, very interesting and super exciting time.
Yeah, and talking to Ethan, how they were anchoring into the Hedera mainnet, the amount of revenue, going back to the question, could be really significant, especially if you get a fair amount of use. It was about, it could get as cheap as 1/200th of a cent, but that was if they were getting is the maximum amount of metadata into the smart contract calls when they were anchoring into the mainnet. But a lot of the time you wouldn't be hitting that maximum. So you could see a fair amount of revenue.
Yeah, and there's a balance to be struck. The builders on top of the network, whether it be private networks or layer twos or on the mainnet, there's a commerciality. There's commercial decisions that need to be made about use of the network. So high volume HCS interactions at some point could just batch those interactions and hash them, and maybe 1/10th of the volume or 1/100th of the volume. As a business, you have to make those decisions because you're not. It makes no sense to be utilizing the network in a suboptimal way. But there are all sorts of different ways now that the network, the mainnet, can be used, and all of them will require some form of interaction. And as we grow, and as more and more businesses grow, that point in the future when everyone's using the network and they don't know it, that's where the revenue really kind of goes through the roof. And it may be a year away, it might be 5-10 years, but it's coming.
Yeah, and any revenue for Hashgraph is, of course, good as well, because that gets it off of some of the treasury that they might be using from
100%. Yeah, the treasury will run out at some point. Coins in circulation will be, or tokens in circulation. It's a finite journey to that point. And so all of the ecosystem partners are working on ways of becoming, putting themselves on a commercial standing and weaning themselves off the HBAR treasury, which actually should be, that is capital that should be deployed in a really optimal and efficient way to support the growth of the network.
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense. All right. So the last one comes from one of your countrymen, HBAR Aussie, who says, Rob recently departed the Digital Economy Council of Australia. Can he speak to his time there and if we can expect some Hedera use cases to come out of Australia soon? Also, what was his reason for leaving? I'm assuming he couldn't fit it into his schedule anymore as he's a busy man, and we know that's certainly true.
Yeah, I am busy, but my service to the blockchain industry in Australia is very dear to me. I left because it was my 2-year term was up, and I chose not to resubmit. The DECA, which used to be called Blockchain Australia, has directors on the board that represent parts of the ecosystem here in Australia. So the digital currency exchanges, or the professional services area, or legal, or community, or there's many categories. And then those areas are startups and scale-ups, another one. And those areas vote for a director. And we each had 2-year terms. It was actually my second 2-year term. I was deputy chairman of Blockchain Australia 6 years ago for 2 years, then stepped down for 2 years. And then I was invited to rejoin as a kind of fellow of the organization, because we had a few things to sort out, in particular, this kind of transition away from kind of just this blockchain specificity into a more digital economy council. And because that's a lot more aligned with where the Australian government is going. A lot of what the organisation does as an industry association is lobby and educate politicians to try and progress the industry with the support of the government and bills and the regulators. And so that brand change and the shift in focus, which continues to support the blockchain and DLT space, but wider in the emerging tech space. So, we're talking a lot about the overlap into AI. We've got quantum coming down the track, fairly soon. So, we're positioning ourselves in a far more kind of digital economy focus. So, that's the only reason I left. And I could potentially go back in the future, but I do have a lot on my plate, and this next year is going to be crazy busy. So, it was right to let. My work here was done. The previous chairman, his term ended as well, Michael Pacina. And there were a couple of other directors whose sole purpose for the last 2 years was this, course correction and re-engagement with the government. And brought some fresh blood in. We've got a far better diversity mix as well, gender diversity mix as well, which is one of the things that we really wanted to do to bring up some of the amazing female leaders in the country as well. So I think we achieved many of the things we set out to do, and let them kind of take it forward for the next couple of years.
And we know we have plenty of use cases that are already coming out of Australia, and I'm sure you're going to be doing the same with AP+.
Yeah, also, just the ones that are public. So we've got Fresh Supply Company, Civic Ledger with their Water Ledger product, Miko. I think you talked to the team out of Byron Bay with the yoga studios, Mind Body Life. I've got 4 or 5 other businesses that I'm advising, and then we've got all of the AP Plus work as well. So yes, there is quite a lot. I apologise if I forgot anyone on that list, but Australia is a bit of a hotbed of Hedera kind of building, and we just agreed with the marketing team to a 12-month kind of meetup schedule for next year as well. So I think we'll ramp it up as well, and we'll get out into all of the cities and get some great engagement going. I've got some good people enthused and ready to support what we want to do to get out on the road as well. So 2025 is going to be an amazing year.
Good stuff. Well, I think that's going to be the case with Hedera in general.
Yeah.
Rob, I know we had some scheduling conflicts. We had to truncate this just a little bit, but I appreciate you working with me on this because I know these questions that people want answered are really important. So, Rob, that's pretty much all we have for this week. To everybody out there, thank you for your questions. Drop any additional ones you have down there in the comments, and we should be good. Rob, we'll see you next week.
Thanks very much, Brandon, and a happy Thanksgiving to all of our US watchers.
So from the very beginning for Rob and I, the thing that probably has us most excited for these ultra-efficient DLT networks has been micropayments as a true frontier use case. But with this decentralized physical infrastructure and now real-world asset tokenization, it could give micropayments a real run for the money. And we actually had some really exciting stuff this week around RWA. First, we had a third-party blockchain research firm, Reflexivity Research, cover Hedera. They highlighted Dovu's carbon credit management, Aberdeen's focusing on democratizing investments, Red Swan's real estate tokenization, and of course, as covered last week, Archax. In conclusion, they said, tokenization is on track to reshape global markets by boosting liquidity, reducing costs, and broadening access to previously inaccessible investments. From tokenizing real estate and carbon credits to commercial paper and money market funds, leading financial institutions and platforms are demonstrating how powerful this innovation can be. Hedera's DLT infrastructure and the launch of its asset tokenization studio further illustrates the growing momentum towards secure, compliant, and scalable tokenization solutions. Next up, my favorite crypto journalist Rachel Wolfson also put out an article on RWA mentioning that over $13 billion worth of assets have been tokenized in 2024 alone, and that's expected to increase by 50x by 2030 according to Trend Finance. Yeah, you heard that right, 50x. Trend Finance gave figures between $2 and $30 trillion of tokenized assets by the end of the decade. In the article, Hedera was featured exclusively in the section entitled New Trends Driving RWA Tokenization Forward. Ed Nwakati of Red Swan was also featured, and Red Swan put out a post saying, "We're fully focused on real estate and very soon we'll be minting a substantial amount of registered real estate security tokens locked on Hedera." And before we get off the RWA train, Hedera-powered Scintilla, formerly Toko, launched its new site saying Scintilla's brand new website is here and it's designed with you in mind. Explore our enhanced features, learn about our services, and discover how we're transforming tokenization and digital assets globally. So I did get a hold of Tim Popwell. He is the CEO there at Scintilla. We had him on before, but he's going to come back on and just kind of give us an overview of everything that's going on in the real-world asset tokenization space, with a special focus, of course, on Hedera. And now we have another interview from Michael. He is our Hashinals expert, the founder of TierBot, and they have some really interesting stuff going on. So let's take a look. Michael, welcome back. How things been?
Hey, Brandon. Things have been great. Stoked to be on the show again.
Yeah, you've been busy, I can tell that. So just to start off, Michael, the amount of growth and innovation that we're seeing in the Hedera ecosystem is pretty mind-blowing. From gaming and sports to infrastructure, payments, and NFTs. What's caught your imagination?
Yeah, it's been really phenomenal. I mean, if you just look at the Twitter timeline between today and like a month ago, like the sheer amount of bull posting that's going on is pretty insane to me. I've been really excited. I'm personally, like, I've been seeing some of the videos from Earthlings and the city that they've built out, and my jaw kind of hits the floor when I see stuff like that, because I realize, like, well, that's a team that's entirely self-funded with no VC interest, and they're just doing all of this themselves. Like they're building out basically a AAA game. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's really cool. You know, going on that same narrative, we've got some of the same energy coming out in the Hashinals community. Two of the things I found really interesting. Number one, there's Watusi behind the Blank Paper DAO account, and he's built this world called the Sketchverse. So it's the first, I think, completely open world on Hedera that you can just jump into and play today, that's hosted on a React application. And every entity inside of this world is actually a Hashinal. So you have playable characters that have been minted before and different assets in the world that are all Hashinals. And they're even adding this new feature now where you're inside the world and you're walking around. And it sounds a little bit crazy to describe, but literally with your keyboard, you're walking around in this huge metaverse. And there's a cube in the middle of this world. So you can click this cube, and when you click it, it actually executes a transaction in your hash pack to generate a raffle entry using the HCS2 standard that we built at Hashgraph Online. So it's a little bit of inception there, because you've got this entire open world and all the assets in that world are actually Hashinals as well. Another cool thing that happened recently is we have another developer in the Hashinals community. and they made this HTML Hashinal app, and it's basically a giant globe. And on this globe, you can, using a coordinate system, put Hashinals onto the map. So you pick which Hashinal you want, and then you select the X and Y coordinates, and then boom, it ends up on this globe, and now you can interact with it. So for me, I'm really excited about it. More of these kinds of developments from engineers getting involved in the Hashinals community and building out cool stuff using the technology that we have now.
Can you just give us a refresher on the difference between most of the NFTs out there and then the Hashinals that you're talking about?
Yeah. So in general, like, Hashinals are still NFTs. The main difference between a Hashinal and an NFT is that with a Hashinal, you have your data stored 100% on the Hedera consensus service, so on the Hedera network, utilizing mirror nodes and topic IDs on the consensus nodes. With regular NFTs, typically your metadata is stored off-chain on IPFS or Arweave. So in simpler terms, if I were to tell you, hey, Brandon, would you rather have an NFT where the data is on a piece of paper, or it's on that piece of paper, but actually there's a location on where you can go and retrieve it? That's basically the difference between a Hashinal and a regular NFT, is where it's stored.
Okay, I got you. So all on Graph. Now I want to get on to TierBot. Of course, you've been doing some amazing work there. What are some of the things that either you're working on that are going to come out in the future or that you've already launched that people should be excited about?
Yeah, I think the thing that we've been really excited about is just creating new use cases. And let me see, maybe I can actually share my screen here.
Sure.
For us, like, we're not planning to be a competitor to X. At the core of it, our ethos is that we are the simplest way that you can store and retrieve these on-graph files. So one of the use cases that we built out recently, and you've probably seen this all over Twitter, are these link pages. And link pages are basically another spin on the link in bios that you've seen, like Linktree, for example, is like one of the most prominent ones. But instead of it being stored on a Web2 server, all of the content for your links is stored 100% on HCS1 topic IDs. What that means essentially is you can go and inscribe your link in bio, put it on HCS, and now if, Kilo Scribe burns to the ground one day or whatever, that file is still there and you can go and reuse it and import any application that successfully implements the HCS1 SDK. CDN, sorry. And through the link in bio tool, you can go and create your links. And it's really as easy as using a drag and drop editor, because you go and you enter your new link over here. Let's say you want to put like the Hedera website, right? You just type it in, hedera.com. And now I want to put an icon. So I will put the Hedera logo over here. And then boom, I've got this new link in here. So it is really kind of intuitive. It feels like a drag and drop editor. You can customize it as much as you want. You have all of these different settings. You can put custom page backgrounds, custom colors for literally like any setting in here. You can go and customize it, set card backgrounds, put your own theme behind it. It becomes quite your own. And most recently, we announced this new feature here called the profile mode. The profile mode is kind of like that next iteration for the link pages. The idea, again, it's not to compete with anything that's out there already today, but just kind of to demonstrate, well, you've got your link page and now you can kind of create a essentially decentralized profile that's stored entirely on Graph. So it plugs in your account ID and it pulls down your balance. It pulls down some analytics that we're getting sourced through TierBot, and all of your NFTs. And as you're going through your NFTs, you can go and view the inscribed file, or you can go and purchase it directly on SentText. So now you've got this profile. If you want to take it a step further, you can actually go and inscribe it as an NFT, airdrop 1,000 copies to a bunch of people, and then they can go and access it from Hashpack. And in Hashpack, there's a little button that takes you straight to the inscription so that somebody always has a memory of you whenever they're trying to look you up.
Michael, I could see this being really useful for the new worlds that Galaxy's spinning up, right? Each one of those has its own icon, and you could spin up, its own icon on your phone. But I think having this kind of repository would make a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, exactly. That was the first thing I thought when I saw Worlds come out. I was like, yeah, this can actually be really cool as an integration into on-graph files. What if you can actually inscribe your entire world and serve it from a domain? Then that takes it a step further where, if something ever happens, you still have your world. Well, now you can tokenize it. Now you can share it to a whole bunch of people. In essence, what it kind of does is two things. Number one, it almost is like a new asset class. If you look at it that way, well, now you've got your generative art, and now you have your worlds in your wallet, right, from different people, and it lets you access them easily. Even if the main utility of having that kind of new asset class in your wallet is a way to access the world, I think that's doing a lot. But I'm sure that creators can look at other ways to add utility to that, because the more people are accessing the world, the better for your community. So there's probably ways you can say, well, if you have a world in your wallet, then you get XYZ benefit as well, tie a little bit of utility to it. Or you have a world in your wallet, well, that unlocks a special channel in your world. Or, there's a million ways that you can kind of do it. And I think that would be a really cool use case for Worlds to take it that step further.
It seems like all this stuff is just kind of coming together. Is there anything else you'd like to cover before we let you go?
I think for us, the big thing is we're going to keep looking at interesting ways where we can utilize on-graph files and showcase what you can really do with it. Recently, we had a big announcement on the Genfinity show with Hashgraph Online formally becoming a DAO. It's actually been something that we've been working on for about 8 months, really. We've got 9 companies behind Hashgraph Online, and I'll be serving as the president to really lead us into this new world where laddering up to the things that KiloScribe is building is a completely decentralized, censorship resistant internet that's powered entirely by Hedera and the Hedera consensus service. That's the world where I think we're heading in. We're working right now towards getting to the point where we can actually build out a browser that can pull in content from the Hedera consensus service. So instead of you accessing a website the way that you do today, let's say you go to Hedera.com. When you go to Hedera.com, you're actually making a request probably to one of the 3 big cloud providers like Google or Amazon, and you're pulling this content in from a non-decentralized source. But Hedera.com isn't a dApp, so maybe that's not a big deal, but you look at dApps like SaucerSwap, for example, and you look at where regulation has gone and how, at the click of a button or switch, your website could just be taken down, right? So utilizing on-graph storage could be a way to kind of prevent that in some capacity, because you have that decentralized storage as the root of your website. And there's no way that somebody can go and kind of rug you from under the hood, because your version that you inscribed as a website, that's going to be the version. You can't go and change it, right? If it's immutable. And it creates another layer of trust, even like from the archive perspective, where a user can go and switch which version of SaucerSwap they want to use. Maybe it's version 1, 2, 3, 4, because all of those versions would be inscribed on graph. So if there's a version that works better for you, you can go and switch to it. And you also have that history to see if anything changes.
Michael, this is some really cool stuff. Thank you so much for coming on today and telling us about it. We're really lucky to have leaders like you. And thanks for continuing to build on Hedera.
Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate your time and putting us on the show.
And the next thing has me pretty shocked. We're getting some positive coverage out of some places that we haven't seen that in the past. Now, some of you may know that the Coin Bureau has not always been very kind to Hedera, but they have been putting out some positive stuff lately. So it's really good to see that shift, and we're seeing that shift across the entire crypto influencer space. I also want to say that it has been confirmed that the next Karate Combat event has moved to December 19th. So we have a little bit of time before that next event, but from what I've heard, the card is going to be absolutely stacked. And just to follow up on what we were talking about last week with the Earthlings City Mint, they sold out in no time. I did the public mint this morning, and in less than a minute, they had their last 140 sold. So it was a total of 1,000 plots, and most of them went to the whitelist, and there were a few that went to the public mint just this morning. As I mentioned, they sold out in seconds. Now, if you do want one of these, they are starting to show up on the secondary market on Centex, starting at a floor price around 3,100 HBAR and going up from there. And they explain it a little bit further on Centex. They say, be a citizen of this new amazing world and become a gallery, museum, or a shop owner in the city. There will be some unique games in the city, and since you will find more traffic in the cities and big events are most likely to be organized there, it might be an interesting place to start your journey. There are more travel options in the city, and as a city resident, you can travel at a discount to new cities. And also, the stores in the cities will have a lot more to offer. And I did manage to get to the last level in SteamRunner. I'm going to try to get some metrics on how many users they have and pass that on next week. But in the meantime, let's take a look at what's going on the Hedera network. For the most part, we're still cruising around a dozen transactions per second, but when I checked in on Hashpoint, we were processing several dozen. We also created 86,000 accounts, made over 730,000 NFT transactions, and just under 30,000 fungible token transfers. We aren't going to cover DeFi this week, but we'll have Brady from Bonzo Finance on next week to have another DeFi corner. Moving over to the HBAR and crypto markets, Bitcoin is down a couple percent this week to $97,000, but after a dip to about $91,000, I wouldn't be surprised to see another test of $100,000 this weekend. HBAR had a great week, up 17% to just about 16 cents. It's testing that 0.382 fib extension level, which we thought would be an area we could see some resistance. Utility tokens are outperforming the rest of the crypto complex, and HBAR is, of course, included in that outperformance. But there are some other utility tokens that are doing even better, including Algo, and more importantly, because of the size of the market, XRP. The reason this is important is this is a pool of capital that HBAR could go after when the time is right. I think there's huge potential for what Mance and Rob have called Hedera 2.0, and while we don't know what that will entail, I'm hoping for an organizational rebrand and cost-cutting, focus on retail and native builders, and my pet issue, competitive staking rewards. HBAR really has the ability to capitalize on this opportunity, and while I wish those other projects well, I also know they're competitors for capital, and the bigger that pool, the better. No matter how you look at it, things are looking bright for HBAR and the rest of crypto as well. So looking forward to next week, I'm going to have Tim Popplewell on from Scintilla to talk about real-world asset tokenization. I'm also going to go on the All In Crypto podcast and try to represent Hedera. I know he's a big fan of everything we're doing in the space. That should probably be out late next week because I'm going to record it earlier in the week. I'm also, as always, going to have Rob Allen on for Shark Bites. So if you have any questions about the HBAR economy or the Hedera ecosystem, drop those in the comments below. That's pretty much all we have. We'll see you next week.